You are listening to Radio Belvaspata, South Africa. This show is dedicated to those who live and love from the heart in infinite ways. In today's episode, we will discuss, share, gain insights, and get clarity on the wisdom and teachings of the mystic and seer Almin, as well as discover more about the miraculous healing modality called Belvaspata. Your host for this show is Paul.
Hello everyone, this is Paul. The Seer Almin tells us all about grace, and she says, "My life is dedicated to excellence. My soul withers in the face of mediocrity. I want to think only the loftiest thoughts possible and dream only dreams of unsurpassed beauty. I want to celebrate the ordinary moments of each day and leave blessings with each footprint. I want to walk a path of grace upon the earth." This is Radio Belvaspata, South Africa's episode for Thursday, the 25th of May, 2017. It is 8 p.m. South African time. Welcome to our light family from South Africa, from around the world. And yes, happy Africa Day, everyone here. Incredible to know that we have all of these days, and it fits in exactly where we're going with in terms of our theme today. We're talking about the bridging that's happening between two colliding worlds, and we're going to look at the explosions and implosions that are happening all at once. I'm not talking about necessarily the physical ones that we are seeing ongoing around the world. These all, of course, have to represent something somewhere, and as tragic as they are, we have to look at them in the different ways and perspectives that we are going to do that. So, bridging the gap between two colliding worlds, we are most certainly that bridge at the moment. Have you noticed within yourself that there is these different realities going on, that one moment you are this and one moment you are that, and you can't quite grasp a lot of those processes. You can't quite perhaps put an identity to them, even though you are trying to sort and fix and repair perhaps, but you are discovering that you keep changing from one aspect, one process, one experience to another as you go along. This is what the show is all about tonight, and we're going to start off just a little bit with a short audio from the mystic and seer Almin. She talks about where our shadow comes from.
Yes, the two different types of shadows is the shadow of something you call in that is absolute head-to-head opposition. Okay, it is opposition. The shadow that is not a real shadow is the shadow that is given to you by others. Little children are told, if you don't do this, then this bad thing will happen to you. So you do it all your life because in the back of your head there is this memory of this fake shadow following you around. The one is programmed from others' belief systems, and the other, actually, to be exact, where does our real shadow come from? This is an important question. From our judgments. When we start to value one thing more than the other, it isn't that something's more valuable than the other, because both are valuable to the grand design or they wouldn't be here. For you, however, something is more inspiring. So that is how you choose it. But if you then judge the other as unworthy, now it becomes an opposition. Everything will oppose you that you deny the right to exist. If something is meant to not exist, you will gain perception and somehow it will just not be there anymore. But not because you opposed it, because you turned on some light. Okay, my loves?
And you're back in studio. I'm your host, Paul, for this episode of Radio Belfast, South Africa. We are going to be listening to a lot of these, some of these different processes and experiences tonight, really understanding that this show is allowing us some time together, creating a special moment where we can just sit and be in oneness and just understand the dynamics of things that are going on a day-to-day level. Sometimes it becomes very difficult for many people, following these teachings of the Siya Al-Min to begin to understand what is going on. And it just takes someone else to comment, to give a trigger, to just give a keyword, and then a whole new world opens up for us. But we are really, really seeing this implosion and explosion that is happening. For me, myself, I'm fluctuating between so many different experiences. One moment, absolute great frustration, and the next moment, just laughing away. And all I can really do for myself at that particular point is simply just accept it for what it is without trying to give it an identity. So, happy Africa Day, as I've said. And for those people who are living here in this continent and understanding the dynamics of differences of the cultural processes that go on, where we are all living in different perspectives and different understandings and realities, and not one is right, not one is wrong, all just blending and combining together, and often something sticking out like sore thumbs day to day along the way. This is really all about where we're at today. Now, what we're doing is we're calling this, bridging the gap between what Al-Min has called the stalkers and dreamers. So she says that, for the cosmos to come to a resolution, enabling it to return to the heart of God on the in-breath, it has to achieve something similar to a human being preparing for entry into God consciousness. The left and right brain functions, or way of accessing reality, has to blend and work smoothly together. The right and left brains of the cosmos are represented by the left and right brain races. One of the biggest challenges that must be met is for these races to cooperate and successfully interact. Because the Earth is the arena in which many of the cosmic problems are solved, humanity consists of both left-brained and right-brained dominant individuals. The planet is feminine, and the right-brained oriented people outnumber the left-brained dominant ones. And we can call the right-brained ones dreamers, and perhaps the left-brained people stalkers. Those approaching life through the left brain, or the stalkers, have what is called a vertical approach to life. The right-brained dreamers approaching life horizontally. So why I've pulled this information out, because I realized earlier this week with these different realities, the internal worlds and the outer worlds, all exploding and imploding, and so much that is going on a physical and mental and emotional level for me, is that, I was like looking at the dreaming state, and I was looking at the work that I have to do and clients to find, and literally I began to realize that the dreamers and stalkers are combining together, these two separate worlds. So we're seeing the left brain and the right brain begin to merge. But, for us here within Africa, we're also seeing the left brain and right brain process. We're seeing all the dominant processes coming up as these processes try to actually speak up for themselves and try to attain control over it. And this is a very interesting dynamic for me to look at. So Al-Min says that the reason for this whole description is that at the moment awareness is born, and that's when the implosion occurs, the mental component of the infinite, which is a vertical waveform, fuses with the emotional horizontal waveform. Awareness consists of both waveforms, horizontal and vertical, fused together as two carrier waves traveling together. A cross-section would look like a wobbly cross. So if fellow master Diane would be in studio with us tonight, she would be looking at some of these processes, because we've discussed with her the aspects of the waveforms that we've been seeing and feeling. And those are absolutely fascinating as we see the wave going out and the wave coming back in again. The stalkers access more of the vertical mental waves of awareness, and the dreamers then access the horizontal waves. Stalkers access the known deeply and analytically, like a flashlight shining small, bright, clearly defined light beam onto a wall. Dreamers access more of the unknown, like a circle of wide, diffused light. Stalkers can juggle 12 balls in the external world for every one the dreamers can. but dreamers will pick up many times more non-cognitive information. And I've been feeling that whole process for myself, as the stalker and as the dreamer. I've had to switch and play different roles, and many of those every single day coming up within the different aspects of my day-to-day experience and my life. But I'm beginning to realize that I can dream at the same time as do the stalking, and each one is starting to project more powerfully as each other, but also we are seeing the implosion and explosion happening as the two begin to merge. Almeen tells us that the way dreamers access the world has been very much misunderstood. The educational system in the world is designed around the way that stalkers think. As it is, stalkers can grasp external information at the rate of 34 units to every 21 units the dreamers can. The dreamers have consequently traditionally been underestimated and underachieving. Because we are archetypally finding a way for the cooperation of these two dissimilar parts of creation to take place, we are manifesting personal relationships in which to study these approaches. And Almeen talks about the stalkers in relationships. I'm just going to go through 2-3 of the points. So, listener, you can perhaps just see for yourself where you fit into any of these particular understandings and experiences, and just highlight for yourself the work that you need to do right now within your own day-to-day experience. Almeen says that as a stalker in relationships, dreamers, in personal relationships, dreamers would find stalkers cold and calculating at times. They are less inclined to make small talk and think they're helping by analyzing their partners or the situation. Well, that brings up a whole host of other processes to work with. Stalkers often fire facts at co-workers or employees in a way that reminds one of a machine gun. They may pause for breath just long enough to ask whether there are any questions, since they may be getting a dazed look from the dreamer who is listening. However, the dreamers can't assimilate such a deluge of information. They get lost early in the conversation and don't even know at this point what the questions are. And Nick and I were in some meetings today, regarding the music programs and platforms that we are working with and creating. And it was really interesting because at one point there was this whole process of questions coming out within everybody, and then suddenly the whole group just went in, well, we don't know what are we. It was like this absolute silence in response. Nobody knew, nobody could remember, nobody could grasp where we were at any one particular moment. And I just sat back and I looked at this aspect of the dreamers and stalkers, and I thought, well, there we go, the implosion and explosions that are happening. As an explosion, just an absolute release of information, and the implosion then comes in and just takes over completely. And you've got to wait a few minutes until we catch up and are able to process and then get on with things yet again. And give ourselves some time. Almeen tells us that stalkers often feel unheard because after carefully explaining in great detail, it's clear that nobody seems to do as instructed, since no one understood. Stalkers may ask dreamers a question, since they seldom make small talk. It's abstract or profound, and they get unclear or evasive answers. Again, they feel unheard, not understanding that dreamers will process a question by internalizing it and feeling it in their heart first. Only then will they think it over, and that could take many days. Stalkers may feel particularly unheard when voicing their feelings. A typical conversation between a stalker husband and a dreamer wife may go as follows. The husband comes home from work and complains that the lunch she makes him every day is giving him heartburn. She is washing the dishes, hardly looks up and says, "That's nice, dear. By the way, the upstairs toilet is blocked. Please fix it." He thinks she doesn't care, but what she has really said that it's not the lunch, that his plumbing is backed up. She doesn't know herself what her words mean. She just accesses it and then expresses it. He's the one who's supposed to analyze it, being the stalker. Almeen then goes into the aspects of dreamers within relationships. She says that dreamers will feel unheard by stalkers. The stalkers find dreamers' questions to be out of place, not on track, or not to the point. They are therefore often dismissed as not contributing or being irrelevant. When dreamers express their feelings, it's often very emotional and appears to the frustrated talker to be irrational or illogical. When a stalker husband tries to create order out of his dreamer wife's ramblings, she feels that he is not honoring the process of her feelings. Any of this sounding familiar, everyone? There are great gifts that the stalkers and dreamers can give each other, of course. The dreamers have a knack for improving the quality of the journey through life. They may take longer to reach the goal, but the end product is often more creative. They provide a lot of energy to stalkers through their association. Stalkers are goal-minded and bring organization to the dreamer's life. They are good at running daily life and creating order out of chaos, something that appeals to dreamers, who frequently have difficulty keeping the physical aspects of their life in order. Until dreamers and stalkers see how to utilize the respective gifts each mindset brings to that relationship, the friction between these groups will be ongoing. Many of us still look for uniformity in our relationships, which brings stagnation rather than growth. The goal of having unity within diversity promotes the most growth, but it requires understanding, patience, and the tolerance necessary to support each other's differences. So Almeen talks then how the stalkers and dreamers can bridge the communication gap, and there's the word bridge again. She says if the two different camps want to communicate, they'll have to learn each other's skill sets. So can you see what is going on within all of us? We'd love to have your comments, of course. Please, send us your comments here online today on the show, or post it up on our Facebook page, or just send us email, etc., etc. Almeen gives us the tools for dreamers. She says dreamers can be seen as slow, since, as previously discussed, their ratio of assimilating new information is 21 to 34 in respect to stalkers. It will assist them to cultivate the tool of speed reading. Colleges offer classes in this. Dreamers get overwhelmed when bombarded by information. They either need to take a proper shorthand class or develop their own shorthand style of writing. Dreamers hold long-term memory patterns well, but not short-term memory. Oh, yes. They have to cultivate better short-term memory by practicing with pieces of information they can afford to fail with. Read a phone number once. Dial the whole number. Do the same with an address. When typing something up, try to type longer and longer pieces without looking at notes. When giving complex instructions, use a shorthand. Then take time to digest and sort out what has been said. See if there are any gaps in the information, and then formulate concise but comprehensive questions to obtain the missing pieces, and do not be afraid to ask. Remember always that stalkers will hold you accountable for every word you say. They have the long-term memory. The tools for stalkers. Stalkers should be identifying the dreamers in their environment and slow down their instructions or conversation by using metaphors, example stories, and humor. When stalkers are speaking too fast, dreamers cannot ask questions since they do not even know what to ask. They take time to process. Stalkers must remember that dreamers could be more intelligent than they are perceived to be, but that the system around them has not allowed them to shine. Remember too that most people are dreamers. Stalkers have often become impatient with dreamers, and by now the dreamers tend to shut down when stalkers get confrontational or blaming or controlling. Stalkers will isolate themselves from others unless they loosen their expectations. By being over-focused on results, they can alienate the rest of the team. Remember, dreamers view time differently. Those speaking vowel-oriented languages, such as the Aboriginal peoples, have worldviews that are even more relaxed about hurrying through life. When Almeen started speaking star languages, her concept of time changed instantly. Stalkers need to have what to them seems like a meaningless social interaction in order to get dreamers to relax around them, so that the stalkers can be heard. If the stalker has a dreamer boss, social co-workers may be promoted over him or her because of the value dreamers place on the quality of the journey. Stalkers must remember that most dreamers say things that they don't mean when emotional. They should at least try and listen behind the words to their intent, using the heart rather than the head. Ask a few questions when the emotions are spent, as too many will make dreamers feel interrogated. Developing listening skills is the number one skill for stalkers to cultivate in trying to bridge the gap. So really what I'm saying tonight is that in my own experience, the gap between the dreamer and stalker is exploding, imploding, completely being destroyed, rebuilt. It's an alchemical equation that is being formed, and out of the dreamer and stalker we are going to see something else manifesting, and that we are just walking through this incredible bridge at this particular time. And of course that bridge for us has not yet been created. It is being created step by step. And coming up in a little while, we'll also talk about and listen to Almeen talk about her, activating the portals of limitlessness and living a life with no limitation. Because if you think in a practical way, just walking on a bridge or creating a bridge is also pretty limited. And I'm feeling a lot of the time that I am stuck in the old programs, and there is some aspects of fear that come up, but I'm grateful that I have the ability, the majority of the time, to maintain an awareness that makes me look towards this aspect of creation and formation. So new shores are being created, but we are still paddling through the ocean, and best to enjoy the view whilst we do all of that. Okay, so what we're going to be doing now is one person who has the most beautiful aspect of seeing beauty in the world, is really, really lovely to work with. This is the Master Diane, and Diane is often in studio with us. And what she's done today, she's talking a little bit about the mantras and the power of the mantras that we get every single day. And these are the cosmic mantras that are posted up on Almeen Diary, and within our local South African WhatsApp group. It's a very, very powerful way of just maintaining awareness. And, every single morning Nico says to me, "Did you see the mantra of the day?" It is just absolutely incredible. And every day it's renewable for him. Really, really beautiful to be able to see all of that. And I truly appreciate it being posted. So, the Master Denise posts that for us every single morning, spot on, as she gets up and starts her particular day. And really, we really appreciate that. Diane keeps us, Denise, it keeps us all together. So find a little bit more about Diane as well, please, because what you can do is you can go onto her Facebook page, and it's under her name, Diane Strydom, Strydom, and there's a link to another page that she's got about the pearls of beauty and dreaming and poetry. And please link up to that and just like that page. And absolutely incredible. Today she's done some artwork and she's posted it up there, and she says that beauty is the weather-beaten smile between friends. And she's drawn another beautiful picture, red hearts and beautiful hands and flowers over a face. And she's written here that beauty is the tenuous touch of hands and fingertips lingering. And I know Diane is probably listening to us tonight, so not to really embarrass her, but just to say in gratitude for having her in my space, because she teaches me to always look for the beauty and the perfection within everything. And for me, Diane is one of those beings who's managed to master it and maintain the awareness of it. So Diane, thank you very much for all of that. What we're going to do now is we're going to listen to a short audio by Diane as she talks about the mantras, and she's created a beautiful track for us.
A daily mantra. This may be repeated in the morning and the evening. I embrace a life of magic, treasuring every moment and every act as a sacred and devotional gesture. I see the magic in the mundane. I create a reality of harmony, of peaceful intentions. I create a reality that is loving, authentic, and honest. I create a reality that is not part of the games of man, that has no agenda and no connection to outcome. I create a reality where I withdraw any energy and focus from unwanted dramas. I create a reality where I am the one and the many, where I am the observer and the participant. I accept all that is, not desiring it to be anything else. I value all as a gift and a lesson, and I acknowledge the perfection in all. I live in praise, love, gratitude, and I live in surrendered trust.
Welcome back in studio. You're listening to Radio Belvaspata South Africa's show for the 25th of May 2017. That was the Master Diane who gave us this beautiful audio with a beautiful backtrack all about the power of mantras. Hi, Michelle. How are you?
I'm very well, and yourself, Paul?
I'm very well, thank you. And welcome back to South Africa.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's good to be back. It's home.
Well, I really appreciated the regular updates and pictures and messages you were sending to me just about your trip around Vienna and into Paris. Oh, looked so beautiful.
It was really beautiful. And Paul, I have to thank you very much for being on the other side of receiving all of this and at least acknowledging it.
No, technology nowadays is really incredible. We can be at each other's fingertips every moment of the day if we choose to do that.
And that's the truth. That is very much the truth. And I think more importantly than that, it creates a connection with your world in the way that you're wanting to create it. So as much as Facebook has got this other side to it, it's also really about connecting, because the people you're connecting with are people of choice.
Absolutely.
And so yes, it is very interesting, the world that we live in terms of how much or how close we actually are.
Really incredible. But, I just think you made a point there about creating the world that we choose to be in, because I felt I was there in Paris and in Vienna, walking through those mazes, watching all those beautiful flowers, those castles and palaces. It was like this world of richness that you forget about exists within you. I mean, we can only, I suppose, really appreciate something if it lies within us. And so I appreciated that from you, just that message came in beautiful moments where completely overwhelmed and overloaded and overworking and, so many things that I'm having to stalk and dream about. And there just gave me that gap just for a few minutes, just to enjoy the richness of your journey through your eyes.
And you know what was interesting about that, Paul, and it actually does tie in a way with the dreamer and the stalker, because in a way, the stalker, being left brain, is very much about the goal orientation, the big picture. You're going to Paris, that's a big place, for example. And one can get overwhelmed with the bigness of that, with the hugeness of that. And I found that if I just concentrated, if I just focused on what took my attention, and very much about looking for the beauty for me in various things, it became one of the most enriching trips I've done. So it's, when we're looking at that vertical wave, being the mental wave, the stalker, and the horizontal wave, being the emotional wave, the dreamer, in a way, I must truly say that this trip overseas for me felt very much about the bridging of that gap.
Okay.
Because the macro and the microcosm existed at the same time. The logic and the emotional side, it was like there was no gap, if I can put it that way. So it became a very enriching experience, just simply because Why? Well, just that whole bridging the gap between the vertical axis and the horizontal axis, for me, really seemed to work on an amazing level on this trip. And coming back and reading or just listening now to the difference between the dreamer and the stalker, if one thinks about it, the dreamer has always been underplayed because our educational system hasn't catered for it. It hasn't catered for, if you weren't logical and left brain, the education system left you behind. You were stupid, or you were not as good as. Once again, that comparison.
Yeah.
And I think it's very, very interesting that we really do within ourselves bring up that dreamer, because it's that dreamer that brings in the creativity, that brings in the beauty, that brings us into a space that takes us beyond mediocrity, which takes us back to Almin's quote at the beginning of the radio show tonight in terms of what grace is.
Oh, that's a lovely link. That's a nice way of seeing it all, yeah.
Because the left brain can become very Gestapo-like, it becomes it can be very rigid. Okay, that's what I mean to say. It can become very, very rigid. And we all know that because We've all experienced it in one way or another about how we stick to a point of view or a belief system or a principle and won't budge from it. And that for me is very much the stalker.
I'm agreeing with you there.
Which I've known myself to be.
Yeah. But again, we can only see what we have been because of all of those processes being in place. And we can only affect change if we understand it through awareness. I've been noticing for myself like lots of little aspects of needing to control things. An interesting process, like, we had a new car this week, and this car stops at traffic lights and switches off until you put your foot on the clutch.
Okay.
And then off you go again. But I'm used to controlling the car by holding the clutch and the accelerator and, getting ready to drive and move and just being that great stalker of the highway. But now I'm sitting in absolute silence, drumming my hands on the steering wheel, waiting for something to happen. And it's very disconcerting, just that tiny little aspect of changing something that you're used to doing.
Yes.
So, yeah, that's where we're at with a lot of it. I'm noticing those tiny little control issues coming up, which I'm really looking at as being aspects of the stalker.
Yes, very much so. Because it's logical that you should be controlling the car and that it shouldn't just stop when you stopped at a robot, that at least the engine something should still be happening.
But literally you're getting a break,
certainly new technology as well.
Yeah, one's just getting a break at the traffic light. Just chill and wait, and off you go again.
Well, it's called a silent moment, Paul, and we're being taught to really just be in the moment, because that's when the creativity and the dreamer is allowed to come in.
I think that's such an important statement, because I've been seeing that within myself. There's been so much creativity merging and coming up within myself, and these lead to manifesting plans, and all sorts of processes can be put into place. But then the stalker aspect comes in, and it's still having to do a lot of the older dynamics and the older things. And frustration is the result of not being able to, bring those creative plans immediately into play. And that's some work I've been having to do on myself very deeply.
Paul, I hear you on that, and I think to a certain extent over a period of time I've learned certain things of how to manage that. And what do I mean by that? I'm clearly a dreamer, because if you ask me a question in a lecture, I look at you and I don't even know what the question is. I don't even know how to answer it. I'm like a rabbit in bright lights. I need time to mull it over. I need time to think about it. So what I've I've been experiencing over quite a while now is that if I've got something to do and I've got a plan, I sleep on it, and I sleep on it, and I will wake up one morning and something will just say, go right, do this, do that, do the next thing. And what I've learned is I've learned to follow those thoughts.
Okay.
When the thought says, pick up the pen and write, I pick up the pen and I write. And what I've found is that the creativity has then put the plan together, if I can put it that way.
Okay.
So within 10-15 minutes, I actually have a broad plan. I know exactly what goes where. I know exactly, you know what I'm saying? It's just like there's this instant thing that happens within. It's actually never longer than 15 minutes. I'm always amazed that I actually have this whole thing down in 15 minutes. There's a plan. I know what the next step is, and everything's, all the boxes are ticked, for want of a better word. And that's where I feel that the stalker and the dreamer have a perfect unity, because it was like the dreamer had the time to bring in the the aspect that Almin said within here. The dreamer brings in something, the beauty that the stalker sometimes misses. Or it brings in the compassion, or it brings in the creativity, it brings in the element that takes us beyond just the logic. But the logic still needs to be there. Otherwise, you can't stand up on stage and give a speech, because you'd sound stupid. Because you what would you be talking about? You have to have some sort of plan, or whatever the case may be.
So, Michelle, just a question here: do you think that there is one more highlighted in your personal experience within your day-to-day life? Are you more a dreamer at one point, or are you more a stalker? Are all these things happening more and more together, as one experience?
Actually, Paul, for me, it's happening more and more as one experience. Okay. I have been both in very definite ways, where I was definitely more a stalker, because I didn't even allow the dreamer to come in.
Sure.
And then when I allowed the dreamer to come in, well, then the stalker was, it was a hard time, actually, to go from not being in control. Even reading this, through the material earlier today, I definitely did feel that in my experience, there's far more of a merging of both of these personality types, where they feel to be more as one. And as the moment arises in life, what do we need? You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I can be as logical as the best stalker out there.
Yeah.
But the dreamer then brings an element into that logic where you just hit the mark straight on. You bullseye. You know what I mean? There's no doubt. And I find that with the two of them merging, a lot of time is saved, because we don't have to go through all the drama that sometimes goes with a stalker being very precise about what it is that they need or want or whatever. You can just put things across in a different way that gets the cooperation of people, which is what amazes me. Because sometimes I'm not always used to that.
Well, the archetype has got to be functioning from particular programming and belief systems in order for it to really express as such. Almin tells us that genius is that seat of knowing without effort, or without, it just comes to us at any given moment. And you're describing this aspect of how she has defined, the teachings of of being the genius. The definition of it is that it's just, you sit down and at that right moment it comes to you and you just write or you just do what you need to do. And there it is in front of you. And
yes.
No worries, it's done. And I think this aspect of having to learn how to trust the cosmos and trust ourselves is the actual bridge that we are now building step by step.
And it's also the thing is, we can't take logic and creativity and separate them, which is what we've done with the left and right hand brain. It's a belief system that we've actually got in, that a left hand brain person does life like this and a right hand brain person does life like this. Yeah. And we've actually separated them. And I think the bridge that we're talking about, in fact, vaguely I recall that I did read something from Almin recently that said that the bridge is actually the bridge of the left and right hemispheres of the brain.
Yeah. Well,
and for that to be coming, together as a one, and I would certainly say that I've been experiencing that more than not.
And I think also learning for me, I'm just reflecting on my own journey and listening to your words. And just reflecting of what you're saying, because I understand that because of my own experiences, obviously, and just thinking that, that trust process that comes into place it's going to be there as we need it, and just honor it and listen to it at that particular time.
Paul, it can't exist without the trust. Because if you're not trusting in the flow, if you're not trusting that of what's happening within you, in your inner world, and being able to bring it out into the outer world, or to have a manifestation or an expression of it, then you're not growing. Then you're staying stuck in the old paradigm, in the old belief systems. So
that's my experience. Absolutely,
none of this. Yeah. Yeah, you've just got to trust it and put up your hands and say, oh, well, what would be will be. And you just really go along. I find the child, to a certain extent, actually, the child and the warrior are quite good over here in the sense that the child has a sense of adventure. If we were talking about the sub-personalities, and I know at one stage Almin's been saying that the child needs to grow up. And I think the child is growing up because it's an adventure. It's got the innocence to it, so you can trust what it is that you're doing, but there's no expectation. And I think that the child allows us to do that, or the more mature child, or the more grown-up child allows us to do it because it's an adventure. But the child actually brings in not brings in the trust, but is trusting.
Yes, there's a natural innocence within that trust, isn't there?
Yes.
I get these points where I'm sitting in absolute wonderment of things, and my arms are raised up and I'm going, I don't believe it. It's just like incredible what I'm seeing in front of me, the huge potential of an experience. And, you have to just sit and breathe through that for a few minutes, because obviously it's going to take work to bring it into a manifested state of being so you can experience it. But it's just like that trust and that innocence of just knowing that you are supported is become, I think, my own inner mantra on a big level. Yes, very much so. Well, Paul, let me put it to you this way. When things get that big for me, in the past, I just get very, very overwhelmed. And the overwhelmedness actually puts me into stuckness, because then I'm just like so overwhelmed. I think, I don't even know where to start. So I've actually, in a way, not stopped the big idea, but it's the big idea, in Balvaspatar, we practice expansion. Yep. And I think that we have to expand
in terms of almost like our daily meditation, and in terms of the mantra that Diane was speaking about earlier. And once we've expanded for the day, all we can then do is focus on the moment.
Yeah. And that's all we've got.
And become very present within that moment. So that's how I'm doing it, because otherwise I just become too overwhelmed with what could potentially be the bigger picture.
Yes, no, I agree.
It's just a case of,
yeah.
well, Michelle, you don't need to know that. You don't need to know that today.
Yeah.
But what do you need to do today in order to get to tomorrow? And the one thing that I'm very conscious of is that every day is about taking an action.
Yeah.
Big, small, 20 actions or just 2.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
Every day is about taking an action.
Yeah. You know, I had a saying coming up in my day earlier this week. Paul, sort out the wheat from the chaff, you know, that kind of thing. And just focus on what it is that you need to do and just take action, just one thing. That's all you need to do. So I'm getting where you're at.
Yes.
And, you know, I enjoy conversations with all, you know, our Light family around the world and within our, you know, our family within South Africa, because we are just so open and honest and transparent about that journey. And I feel that we are owning it, per se. You know, we're saying, okay, I'm owning this journey even though I don't understand it.
Oh, yes, I'm definitely owning it. And it's not only about not understanding it. Sometimes I don't like it.
Yes.
You know, there's also a time where I'm thinking to myself, oh, this is hard. I really don't like it. And there was a comment by one of our members of the Light family that said, when one's going through life struggles, it's sometimes difficult to really keep this whole thing up, you know, in terms of trust, in terms of merging of the dreamer and the stalker and the macro and the microcosms. It's sometimes really difficult, and yes, it really is. But so I think it's very possible that sometimes we don't like it either.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I'm just sitting here going through the whole process and just letting it all come up for me in terms of what we're sharing. Absolutely incredible. There was somebody in our space this morning, and she's been going through a bit of a rough time, and she said she's just having this meltdown. And I just turned and I said, I really understand what you're saying, but let's just own it and not identify it as anything else, but just experience it for what it is, because it's either going to drag us down or drag us up. It doesn't have to do any of that. Let's just be okay with any of this. And she just took a look at me and she said, no, you know, I agree now. I can see, you know, where there's benefit in that. And I walked away, and that was just one of those genius moments of sharing something with somebody and realizing for myself what it is that I need to do for me.
And you know, the thing is, Paul, that with that level of acceptance that this is what it is, and there's a level of acceptance, we get beyond blame, we get beyond expectation, we get beyond all those invisible cords that bind us to things. And it's just like, okay, it's hard, it's tough. I'm admitting that. I'm not admitting to being a hero or strong or whatever other definition anybody wants to give. I'm actually feeling weak and vulnerable right now, so I'm going to have a weak and vulnerable moment. Whether that lasts for that moment, that day, but I find that the acceptance of it immediately almost dissolves the feeling.
Yes.
In the sense that you don't have to hold on to it for as long as what you needed to hold on to it, or what you were so stubborn to hold on to it, because that was the victim, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
In terms of, let me feel sorry for myself.
Yeah. And that's a mental and emotional process that is going on, that is holding one victim, you know, holding the power over you. And that's just where the belief systems are sitting.
And that mental and emotional problem is exactly what brings us back to the stalker and the dreamer, because that's where the constant clash has been, hasn't it?
It has.
Because the mental almost prevents us from thinking with our heart. Whereas, but we need the logic, we need the planning. It still has a value.
Yeah,
it's not like we can throw the baby out with the bathwater, but we also can't just be airy fairy and not have that logic. So that meeting together, or the bridging of the gap between the mental vertical wave and the horizontal emotional wave, has actually brought a beautiful visual to me.
Yeah.
In terms of understanding this concept. It's I feel a strength from that. What did Almin say? The wavy cross.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, definitely
yes,
there.
Yes,
that word.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. So, no, there I agree. I'm on the same page.
Yeah, sometimes I do a bit of the dreamer things when we have conversations, because I get so lost in I'm going to use the rapture of the process and the discussion, that I forget to actually talk, or I don't have anything to say in terms of response. I just go, yeah, there it is. And it's just this realization is setting in. And for me, that's very beautiful. So thank you for that too.
You're welcome, but let me put it to you this way, Paul. I don't find you without words very often, so I'm not really going to believe you on that one.
We'll work on it some more. Michelle, thank you so much for sharing and just being yourself, and bringing back so much beautiful energy and frequency and light for us to all understand, and just to know that, you're also walking the journey so authentically. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing with us tonight.
Thank you for having me, Paul, and thank you for a great show. Take care.
We'll see you very soon. Bye-bye now.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
And that was the Master Michelle, just speaking with us from her home on the other side of Johannesburg, just talking about her trip and her life, and we're just sharing as we do on a regular basis. So wonderful to have these beautiful beings around me, and I appreciate all of that. And of course, I appreciate everyone around the world as the Light Family, because your posts every day are read and appreciated, and I just find those special moments of everybody as they're being authentically and being who they are and able to post it. So thank you very much. I'm learning a lot from all of you. And likewise, I hope that you are finding that this radio show is a place of just being in oneness and together just for that little while. So yeah, Almin's coming up with an incredible webinar now, because she is taking us to the next step of the journey. We talked about the stalkers and dreamers today. We talked about it merging. And then, what is manifesting out of that? What is this alchemical collision creating in terms of an explosive state of being? Well, she's coming up with another webinar on May the 27th, June the 3rd, and June the 10th. It's called Activating the Portals of Limitlessness and Living a Life with No Limitations. She says that in this new reality that is now forming, life has form, but everything is in limitless supply. Limitlessness is a foreign concept to us, having not encountered it before. And this international practical webinar course is really about learning to live in this incorruptible white light, to activate what's called the portals of limitlessness and living a life with no limitations. I'm really looking forward to that particular webinar. There's 3 webinars there with exclusive information from the Immortal Master and Seer Almin, practical techniques and activations. Almin is now going to talk to us about the body as an expression of limitlessness. And in this message, Almin reveals how up until this point in our cosmic history, the body has become a limited tool, much like a hologram. Yes, thank you very much for one of our members who sent me a message earlier, and she spoke about she's seeing holograms everywhere. Yet in this next evolutionary stage, our body actually becomes us. It becomes an expression of our limitless in a coagulated form of white light. The first step in this process is the opening of the 8 portals of limitlessness in the body to prepare the self for this new reality. Here's the Seer Almin talking about the body as an expression of our limitlessness.
We have studied for eons the issue of spacelessness by learning about inner space affecting outer space, and by learning how to integrate them. And truly, inner space is limitless. So, what we have as a next step is the grand and profound evolution into becoming a body of white, immaculate light. And as I've said before, up until now, we have worked with the body as a tool, but it was just a practice run. The body was, in fact, a limited tool, as though it were a hologram. We were the formless part working through this formed part. But this changes when we go into this big evolutionary step. Our body then becomes us. And it is this concept that is so important that it prods people with unpleasant symptoms when they make that transition or are ready to make that transition, that they must get. That it is our limitlessness expressing in a coagulated form of immaculate white light. This is a very advanced concept to get. We will be dealing with it throughout the next year. It is simply our next step. But the first step is to comprehend and prepare the body for limitlessness. This magnificent shaping of ourselves into our body is a powerful event, but an event that has to be preceded by the portals in the body opening for this new reality, a world in which we live in high magic. So, my beloved ones, we hope to see you there. Much love and respect to you always. Thank you for walking this journey with me.
This is Radio Belvaspata, South Africa. I'm your host, Paul, and handling our sound desk so superbly well is the beautiful master and musician, Nico, busy working on his big album for release. Absolutely beautiful creative moments coming out there. I can't believe that somebody can actually write a song and music in 20 minutes and then just slightly edit it, and boom, he's got this amazing song, and it's just pouring out of his heart, pouring out of his being, and so wonderful to watch it all happening. Almeen's weekly prediction coming up for May the 29th to June the 4th. She says great spiritual gifts await. It's the rune 8.21. The angel is called Masuhuk. It says, seize the opportunities that the present moment begins. How's that for connecting the show together? The explanation, great spiritual gifts await for you this week. Prepare to receive them by completely removing all energy from good and bad past dreams. Prepare also by seeing others beyond the obvious through empathic understanding. And that's the Almeen's weekly rune prediction for May the 29th to June the 4th. You may already have seen the rune prediction which comes from Ella of the Russian light family. Those are normally pretty extensive rune predictions. If you haven't read it, please go onto our Facebook page under Belvaspata South Africa and read it, because point by point we are living it every single week. I get so excited waiting for it and just waiting for that next prediction to come up, because I know what is coming up and I start to work with it and I just see it bit by bit. And as I reflect at the end of the week and I look back at those predictions and I see what has gone on, I am in absolute awe and wonderment. So there we go, Michelle. That's when I do stop talking for a moment or two. So we've come to the end of our show. what we're going to do is just close off with a comment by the author and spiritual healer called Matt Licata. And he's going to kind of put the show together with this comment. So I'd like to read it out. He says, please continue to make requests of your lovers and friends in all of their forms, whilst simultaneously remaining committed to the empowered, alive realm of self-care, no longer willing to abandon yourself, even if you are abandoned by another, to dare to be your own best friend, to attend to your body and your heart and your soul in wild and wise ways, even when the other is nowhere to be found. And when some of your needs do go unmet, as they inevitably will, to no longer be seduced by the ancient conclusion of the little one who deemed herself unworthy as she longed to make sense of an environment that could not hold her as the mystery that she was. Instead, to slow down, breathe into your lower belly and open your senses and step into the sacred world which is here now, honoring the power and sacredness of the relational field, which is not oriented around meeting all your needs, but revealing how whole you already are. And that's the teacher and author Matt Licata. Thank you everyone for being part of our show, for sharing with us. Thank you for the comments online and on our WhatsApp group. Thank you for honoring us and being with us. Please, if you're listening to the show right now, press follow on Spreaker.com's page so that you can just know that we are coming up again next week and begin to work with us. We are getting many, many more different listeners every single week. At last count, we were in something like 34 countries around the world, and sometimes there's a small percentage of listeners, and it's so interesting because I haven't heard of some of these countries, and then I have to go look on the big world map and find out where you are. So please note that I'm watching. We're all watching what you're doing and where you're at. We'd love to hear from you, and we are so thankful that we get this opportunity just to share an hour with you every single week, and that the masters around us also get to share with you and just be authentic and open and where we're at. This is Radio Belvaspata, South Africa. I'm your host, Paul, and I'm saying good night and offering, sending, and being love, praise, gratitude, and surrender trust. Until next week, Thursday, good night.
You've been listening to Radio Belvaspata, South Africa. Thank you for listening and sharing in our discussion. Should you have any questions with regards to the healing modality of Belvaspata or have any healing needs, please send us an email to info@belvaspata.co.za or add comments to our page on Spreaker.com so we can work on providing a suitable response. We now close this episode with the eternal ascension qualities of love, praise, gratitude, and trust, and look forward to sharing again with you next week. Goodbye.